Welcome. I'm Shelly O'Neill from the Green Velvet Couch, and I'm a therapist, a wellness coach, and certified corporate wellness specialist. On this podcast, I have the honor of talking to people who will be sharing their inspiring stories about how they've overcome obstacles to really live their life to the fullest. Hopefully, you'll leave the podcast being challenged, informed, and sharing a few laughs as we talk about hard things in a relaxing and fun manner. And as the owner of a 100-plus employee healthcare company, I know firsthand that corporate wellness is personal wellness. I'm so interested in healthy people and successful people, and successful meaning people that have designed their own life. I'm really interested in what practices you've implemented in your own life to enhance your mental health in your company.
So, with my CEO role, I'm really looking towards not just casting vision for the company, but really focused on company culture and sort of leadership and team development. And so those are really that's where I really focus the majority of my time and effort. Obviously, business development is part of that as well, but that's part of every job. So
Sure.
So yeah, that's usually where I focus. Mental health has been a huge part of my own journey. I have Meniere's disease, and so that impacts me on a daily basis. And then I also was recently diagnosed with adult ADHD. Apparently, I've been self-treating that for many, many years. And so, all of that comes into play, not only in my, company, but also when I'm running my life. And so I would just say that I'm a big advocate for female-owned businesses and just females in general, whether they own a business or they're working for someone else. And so a lot of those things just sort of culminate together into one big go out and advocate for women to be the best version of themselves.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I love that you brought up ADHD. One of the things that I talk about when I work with CEOs and entrepreneurs is that what makes us great is also often our biggest struggle and finding that balance. And
Yeah.
ADHD can be a wonderful thing for business. There's a lot of you can spin a lot of plates, you have a lot of energy, you can think quickly on your feet, but with that comes also the disadvantage of that and that hyper
Mhm.
focus and going down the rabbit holes and not always managing your time wisely. So I'm so appreciative of you saying that.
Yeah,
So thank you for sharing
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. I'm a big advocate for talking about it to help normalize it for other people. So,
One of the trainings I recently did, we talked about touch it one time. And for those of us that are ADHD, which so am I, what I've learned is I always want to go back to it because I want to move on to the next thing. But if I take my time and take care of that
yeah.
that phone call right then and there, I'm not always having to circle back. And that's it's a
Yeah.
little life hack. But when you run a company, that adds up to hundreds of hours a year.
Yes. My entire thing has been built on systems. So it is, I always joke, we started as a marketing company because that's how what I knew to do. I had experience with that. And then very quickly when I started hiring people, I'm like, if this doesn't have systems, I'm going to lose my mind because I want to check it off a list and
Mhm.
move on to something else and not be constantly mentally bogged down by all the things. And so we are a very efficient, systemized company. And over COVID, we actually started to get requests to help other businesses with that. So where we started as a marketing agency, we now have an entire revenue stream that's just helping people with systems and optimization and, just workflow efficiency. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's incredible and so important to a business. Like those processes, they can make or break
Mhm.
your business. I've worked with a lot of people who have great ideas and they're very passionate, but they may have terrible processes, so they can never quite bring it to fruition.
Scale. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah. That's what we try to help people with specifically is how do you get out of your own, I'm the only one who can do it. And it's you don't need to be the only one that can do it. That should not be a badge of honor for you.
Mhm.
Like,
Yes.
you're
Yes.
self-limiting and then you're upset. So, no, that makes total sense.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then you get to the burnout gate a whole lot faster because you think you're the only one that can do it. So I think when
Right.
you're talking about growing a company, you're really looking at having those great processes in place and delegating and handing off. And boy, is that tough to do. So give us some
Yeah.
advice. Like, how have you become so successful? Tell me what's worked.
So I will say that for me, it's about a mindset. So when you're talking about scalability in particular, I have like a project manager mindset. So even though I'm the founder and CEO, the thought process is what you mentioned, Shelly. Like, how do I only have to touch this once? So the question becomes, is this thing going to happen more than once? So, right, like, am I going to, great example, am I going to onboard a new client more than one time? Of course I am. Why would I do that from scratch every single time? Right. So,
Mhm.
for example, I've just signed a client. Do I have a welcome email? Well, the first time I write it, I'm going to write it from scratch, right? But
Right.
instead, if I have a project manager mindset, I can be thinking, how do I write this letter in a way, this email in a way that is applicable to everybody from here on out, with maybe a couple of exceptions, but like it is 97% of what I need all the time.
Mm.
And so it becomes a templated workflow instead of, well, every time I sign a new client, I have to remember to go in and start typing up a welcome email, right? And so that
Mhm.
becomes the mindset for everything. I started that way when I began hiring people because it was a little bit easier to get them to execute the work that I had already sold by doing that. But
Mhm.
now we teach the people in my company that they need to have a project manager mindset as well. So now I have my team members coming to me saying, "Hey, Anna-Vija, we've got this process. We templated it out. We created these, communication standards, best practices guides, checklists, templates." And it's like, awesome.
Yes.
Now, when we have new people come in, there's not just one person who knows how to do something. Anyone can be taught how to do that fairly quickly.
Mhm. That is so valuable to hear that. That's awesome because people get so bogged down in just the things you're doing over and over, but you don't really have a good process for those. We deal with the same thing. We have to, even though we have 100 plus employees and 6 locations, the fact is we have to do a great job from that referral source, whether it's the client or it's a physician or a hospital. But, no matter how long we're in business, we still have to have a process for getting that person in our facility.
Hmm.
So I really appreciate the approach then of the project manager mindset.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Absolutely.
Hey.
Standard SOPs, SOPs like was
Mhm.
the way that I learned that in corporate language. And then when I opened, I was like, man, I don't want to be marching around telling people about SOPs. I'm like, we got to come up with a better way, a more approachable way to think about this that isn't like standard SOP. Like, okay,
And I have to laugh at myself, and I have, I'm going to write a book on what not to do in business because
sure. That's
I'm
going to be
just
a novel, Shelly.
yes, exactly. And it was so funny because when I worked for other corporations and all, I would get so bored by like
Oh.
SOPs and processes and policies. And I would be like, oh my goodness. But now, as the owner, I realize how valuable those are. And if we don't have those things in place, then we don't have a successful company.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing. A lot of people get buried in the work and they're like, the only way for me to scale is if I work harder by doing more of the things. And it's
Mhm.
like, it's not that you can't be, it's just much, 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 much harder. Whereas if you were like, wait, have you heard that? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Have you heard
Yeah.
that before?
Yes, I
Yeah.
have.
And
Yes.
so it's like you might be able to get things done a little bit quicker if you're doing them on your
Mhm.
own, but like you're not going to be able to do nearly as much. And so at
Mhm.
some point you're just burnt out and frustrated. And it's like, okay, or you could have just asked for help and like found some good people to bring them in and then everybody wins. Yeah. Yeah.
I think as a psychotherapist, one of the luxuries that I had is I was working with CEOs and entrepreneurs, and I would hear them in session. They would talk about things, and I started noticing that really successful entrepreneurs had the best team. They invested in the best team,
Hmm.
and the healthiest people that I still today work with always have the healthiest team as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not about how much can you or I do and how we can develop our own skill set and how many hours in a day can we actually work. It's about developing that healthy, skilled team.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and when you think about, again, scaling your time, in probably my late 20s, I took my first one of those like communication personality profiles. So I did the DISC
Oh,
was the first one I took. And so since then I'm just addicted. I've done all of them, like the Enneagram and the, what's the other Myers-Briggs and Strengths
yeah.
Finders and all those things. But when I first took the DISC, I was really disheartened because I didn't realize in my, late 20s I had not realized that other people process information differently, that other people communicate differently. It just wasn't something I had been taught. And so when I learned about my own communication style and how I'm a high D on that disc, I am just dominant personality. And I'm very interpersonal, but it means that I'm coming in hot. I'm like, hey, how are you? Let's do 8 million things. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Get that done. Get that done. And so
Mhm.
when I realized that that's how I was, and it gave me sort of a peek into everybody else's communication style, I was devastated. I was like, "Oh my god, like of course nobody likes me. Like I'm a bulldozer of a person."
Mhm.
It just had never occurred to me to think about it like that. And so now when I'm building a team, my goal is to intentionally hire people that are going to help balance me
Mhm.
so I can collaborate with and be enthusiastic with, I can get that energy from people who are wired like me. But having a company of 5 or 6 of me is a recipe for disaster. Like, that is with all of us going, "Let's do all the things," and then nobody getting anything right. So, when I hire, I love those tools because it allows me to strategically bring in people to help that I can say, "Look, my skill set, I have," like we mentioned before, I've got adult ADHD. You know, I am not good at sitting here for 8 or 9 hours a day at a computer in front of spreadsheets, in front of lists, checking things off. I can have moments of hyper focus, but they're about 45 to 60 minutes and then I'm out, which
Mhm.
means I can go hire people that love sitting in front of a computer all day and not talking to other people and checking things off of lists while they make spreadsheets. And that works for me because we go further together. I can go, here are all the things I want done. And they can go, great, I'm going to sit here and do them. Leave me alone. And so it's a nice balance, but you have to be able to understand what you were saying a moment ago, Shelly, like who you're hiring and how you complement and work together. Cause like,
Mhm.
if you don't understand how those people are wired or what their true competencies and skill sets are, like during a job interview, everyone's going to tell you they can do it because they want a job.
Mhm.
But are they really going to enjoy it and stick around? Like you got to make sure you find the right people.
Well, I love the word that you used, intentional, being intentional in your hiring. That's so key. And also, that lets me know that you have a tremendous amount of insight about yourself, about what works well for you, and understanding that I didn't know people process information and communicated differently. So that seems kind of basic, but the fact is, you're pretty evolved because a lot of people don't understand that. And then they get frustrated. There's a lot of drama at work. There can be a lot of negativity. They start assigning things to people that are inaccurate because they don't
Right.
have that insight and they've not hired in an intentional manner.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, my favorite example of that is people are usually drawn to those who have a lot of like high positive energy.
Mhm.
And it's great, right? But like in an interview process, it's going to be easy for me to try to sell my company to the person I'm
Mhm.
interviewing. It's great to work here. We have such a phenomenal team. We do such
Mhm.
great work. And then at the end, I, as the hiring person, feel good, right? Because I'm
Mhm.
like, this has been a great conversation. When in reality, it's like, no, it was just me putting a lot of my own energy into the conversation and leaving like, this would be a great person to hire. And it's like, did you actually learn anything about that person or did you just like right like dump my personality onto them? And so one of the things that we did was we were talking about workflows. I took hiring off of my job role because what was happening is that I was like coming into those interviews super excited and like
Mhm.
like extroverted and just like can't wait to meet you. And I would get done and I would be like, oh, darn it. I actually didn't really learn that much about that person or what they wanted to do. Not because I was talking over them, but because I was driving the conversation towards happy, positive,
Mhm.
like opportunistic conversation points. And so we used a book called The A Method for Hiring, if you've ever heard of that. One of my business coaches gave it to me, and it is a very specific template and workflow for how to take some of that emotional impact out of the hiring process.
Mhm.
And so we took the book, I gave it to my project manager at the time. She's now my operations director, but I gave it to her and I said, please turn this into a workflow so that you and the team can hire without my emotional impact, like without me just coming in and being like, I
Mhm.
love everybody. And she's like, okay. And so they went and turned it into a workflow. And now when we
Mhm.
hire, we have its own process. We have like forms we fill out to be able to like, to
Mhm.
interview people on an apples to apples scale. It's completely changed our retention to be able to have people that are better suited for the role than just me coming in and going, you sound like a great person. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I can so relate to that. I had a very similar experience. My team finally said, so here's the deal. You like everybody. You want to hire everyone. Can you please not be involved in the interview process? And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? But secretly, I was really relieved because what I started noticing was I was selling people on our company and what a great place to work, very similar to what you were talking about. And then when our team started interviewing, they started asking things about, their competence in Excel and pivot tables and all sorts of things. And I'm just talking about positivity and like morale and compassion and empathy. And so it was a game changer, for us. And now I meet people typically after they're hired, which is just such a better way for
But
me
it
to do things.
That's exactly how we do it too. So it's like, all right, like if it's a high level position, then I'll meet them before. But like a lot of our like entry level, which is usually where we start people, it's like, come on in,
Mhm.
part-time contractor. Let's make sure because we're a remote company. So, when you have a digital ads agency, like or a digital marketing agency,
Mhm.
like we don't have to sit in the same room. And so, start as a part-time contractor. Let's make sure digital work and remote work is right for you and that it's a good fit. But I'll meet him about 2 weeks after. We have like a one-on-one Zoom call
Mhm.
and I get to ask, like, how are things going? What's your feedback? What are you enjoying? Is there
Mhm.
anything that you're struggling with or that we can help you with? And then we talked about company culture at the top of the podcast here. And it really is like, let's talk about culture. Like,
Mhm.
are you really enjoying working here? Let's talk about company values. Like, here are three core values as a company. As you're starting to like really get involved with this company, I want you to keep those in mind. And here's
Mhm.
how I want you to participate in them. And so it gives me the opportunity to have a different conversation that isn't just me being a salesperson. Like, you
Yes.
want to work here? We're great. And it really frames the narrative a different way. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That is such valuable advice. Well, speaking of culture, I want to ask you when you're building your company, talk to me about like mental health. What does that mean to you personally,
Mhm.
your practice, your company?
I'll tell you a really brief backstory. So I started working in restaurants when I was 16 as a hostess. And then I worked in restaurants until I was about 22. And then I was started working in private country clubs. And I did that until I was 28. So from the ages of 16 to 28, I basically worked in hospitality, but in environments that are not very mentally or even physically healthy for young women. Let's put it that
Mhm.
way. In that course of time, I basically like I was sexually harassed, like, ageism, gender discrimination, like all of those things. There was a lot of like older men telling me to go do their jobs and then taking credit for those jobs or blaming everything wrong on me of something, right? Like
Mhm.
that sort of dynamic. And so by the time I was in my late 20s, I was basically clinically depressed. I was having regular panic and anxiety attacks, chronic anxiety, and really just in a point where like it was the lowest place I've ever been with my mental health. And it was just like, I can't do this anymore. And so I made the decision to leave the country club or the club downtown, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I started doing marketing as like gig work or as a freelancer before I decided to do it on my own. It sort of accidentally opened a company in 2014. And then since then, I have made my core company value, the number one that will never change is happiness. And so I made that vow to myself in 2014 when I had to hire my first helper, my first contractor team member, because I was like, I'm not going to create an environment like the ones that I've been working in that were so toxic. Like, if I'm going to do this, I will have the intention of focusing on happiness. And so for almost 10 years now, right? Because it's 2023 when we're
Mm-hmm.
recording this, everything since has been part of the mental health journey. So it is a company. I am running and growing a company, right? But all of that has been part of my own mental health and subsequently the mental health of my team. And so it started with I'm not going to take clients that are hateful. Like, I'm just gonna use that word because it's the nicest word I
Sure.
can think of, but
Yeah. Yeah.
everyone has that, right? Like, clients that are just not a good fit,
Mhm.
that are verbally abusive, that are all those, like, I'm not gonna and if I take a client and they become that way, I'm gonna let them go. Like, I don't care about the money. I We are here to be happy. We're not here to be abused in our workplace. We're gonna let them go.
Mhm.
So it started with kind of that, like, trying to trust my gut to find the right people to work with on a client basis. Then it became really protecting our work life integration. So, virtual company. Right from the get go, I was like, here's the company policy. I don't care where or when you work. As long as you're communicating and available and getting your work done on time, like you can work from Hawaii if you want.
Mhm.
Right? Like, I don't care if you
Sure.
work 10:30 midnight at in night. Like, I don't as long as you're available, like, as long as you're communicating with us and, like, you're getting your work done, like, that's your life. Those are your work rhythms. That's your focus. Like, if you have family in town or you gotta go to the dentist, like, you don't need to ask my permission to go to the doctor. Like, go to the doctor. Just, like, tell me that you're gonna get this done later in the day. Like, just communicate well. And so treating people with respect like adults that know how to manage their own lives really became the second focus. And then from there, once I had a more healthy environment, I was able to focus on my own mental health. And so that became going to therapy on a regular basis. I don't do it religiously, like not like every single day, but like I
Mhm.
do use yoga and breathing techniques and meditation to kind of like calm myself. And then I am very big on that work life integration. And so, like today, I have a series of calls, but I have them interspersed to where, like, I'm gonna be done with this podcast and go take my dogs for a walk,
Mhm.
right? And then, like,
Yeah.
after that, I'll
Which is
have a
healthy.
call and I'll probably yeah, like, do laundry while I'm on the call or, like, wipe down the
Mhm.
counters or you know what
Mhm.
I mean? So, like, I try to keep all of that in mind on a day-to-day basis. And there are a lot of things that we've implemented from a team perspective, like a company perspective as well. But I think it all started with me just experiencing such a low point in my mental health that I had to say, no, I have to create this for myself. I have to focus on it for myself. And then, of course, that means creating my own work environment that supports it as well.
That's such a great visual of how you evolved from coming from that hospitality service industry and just making certain that you're setting good boundaries for yourself and also for your employees, and then also what you're doing is you're setting the bar, you're setting the standard that we're not going to do this because we don't have to. It's not about the money. And I think
Yeah.
once you start protecting and advocating your staff, that can really formulate a really tight fit team and really watch people just kind of bloom and just do great things.
Yeah. Absolutely. We have team members that are we joke that you got to be careful when you start working for me that, the water makes you real fertile. We have had like and I know and I understand part of this is mental health, right? But like there are like in the 9 years that we've had the company, I mean, we've had multiple people that have worked for me that have been struggling with that have been trying to get that like all of a sudden get pregnant. And it's like, oh, maybe, and again,
Wow.
I'm not there's a lot of things that go into that and I'm not claiming, but it's like I do know that like when you feel like you're in a safe and supportive environment, like it does allow your brain to kind of let go of some of the stress or anxiety that you've been holding on to. And other big milestones, people who have fallen in love, gotten married, purchased their first homes,
Mhm.
all of those things. And it's a very, very fulfilling thing as somebody who's in a leadership role because I understand that like, your staff are not like your best friends, right? Like everybody has their own lives outside of work, but it is a family to some degree. Like especially with a small team like mine is, we are very close and I want the best for them. And so it's really cool when that core value of happiness, you can see that play out in people's lives, not just in work, but also where, it allows them to pull some of those learned lessons into their lives and start to really, like you said, to start to thrive or bloom, which is really cool.
It does. You really get to see how your company is changing the lives of your employees and then your community as well. And that's when we talk about our culture leaving a legacy. We
Yeah.
want to leave the legacy is that we want to leave our community healthier. And that has to start with our own employees. And then it's our clients, but it's really affecting everyone. And the same thing, I've worked for places that just the opposite happened and I saw people experience burnout. I saw people leave an industry that were amazing and
Mhm.
things because of those really toxic environments. And then there's always been this like double standard of what we say to people is one thing, but we're so busy and we're driven and we're successful. We kind of don't have time for that. And that's so wrong on so many levels. And so we
Yeah.
try and push being authentic and congruent.
Yeah.
And that is you don't show up at work being a healthy employee if you're not a healthy person.
Right.
Ulti yeah, yeah,
These are not 2 separate people in your body. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
very comprehensive thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and we have, I mean, so in January, we decided to go to a 4-day work week.
Mhm,
And so that has been, I think, one of the biggest. It took us 2 years to get there. It was 2.5 years ago now. I was like,
sure,
"This is an idea I have. I think it matches our company culture. I think it's part of, my own mental health journey. I think it's part of, just understanding and respecting people's time and contribution and their lives and all those things. And so we started to work towards it. Like, let's have a no call Friday. Let's have a no call Wednesday. So now we got 2 days a week. Okay. Well, now if we merge those together and like how to, so, we figured out a way over 2 years to kind of like baby step our way into it to where we didn't just like flip a switch. But in doing so, the team got to really talk about it and make good decisions around like they got to have some leadership in the how are we structuring this? Why is it necessary? How are we going to split the time? Because we're open 5 days a week, but half of the team takes off on Monday and half of the team takes off on Friday, right? So, like, I think that, like, even exercises like that, I could have just come in and said, this is what we're going to do. But instead, it was like, hey, team, let's talk about this. What does this look like? Why are we taking an extra day off? What are you doing with that extra day off? And in full disclosure, like we've only been doing it about 5, 6 months now. I
mhm,
know that I and some of my team members still work on that day off, but there's a different expectation, which means if they're doing that, it's because that's better for their work life integration, for their,
yeah.
their rhythm, their flows, their whatever. If they want to take a part day off here and that, so like those are the things that I think are really fun progression to see. You're not just creating this environment and dumping people into it, right? You're pulling people along and saying, let's all work on this together. Let's all be conscientious of our mental health, of us as comprehensive humans. And then when I get a message that says, hey, I've had a really hard weekend or I've had a really hard couple of days, I need to take a personal health day. It's like, okay, great. I will cover something, like, I'll cover this for you. The systems are in place to do that, right?
Mhm,
I'll just jump in and cover
mhm,
your stuff today. But I think that what you said, it's like it's impacting the community because one person at a time, you're not just being like, oh, we're a company with a ping pong table. Yay. And no offense to people who have those, right?
sure.
But like by coming in and teaching people how to address their own mental health and their workload and their goals and all of those things, like it leaves people better than you found them.
It sounds like you do a great job of empowering people. And as women, we juggle so many roles, as a mom,
Yeah, yes.
as a partner. And, I always think about because my husband has owned a company for 25 plus years. And I always think about, when he leaves for work, there's some things that it's probably not occurred to him just from like a household perspective,
Yeah.
and I think that the reality of parenting and working and, being present for kids at school and daycare and just being available for them. I was a single mom
Wow.
and I felt like there were a lot of times I was coming in on two wheels to that basketball or football practice or, whatever at school. I was racing to get there. It, and occasionally that's just life. And you just have to do that because something just happens, but you don't want to practice that way. You don't want your
Right.
entire career to be that way. And that's what I hear that you're doing differently is you're setting a different standard. You're empowering people so that they don't have to exist in that space while they're working.
That's the goal for sure. And I will say, I think one of the most challenging parts about that, especially because of my toxic corporate background, is in order to do that, there has to be trust. I have to trust that the people that are working for me are going to get their jobs done and that they're going to get it done on time and that they're going to let me know if there are any problems and that they're not going to try to hide or keep things from me, right? There has to be trust. And so one of the things when I'm working with other business owners or coaching other business owners, a lot of people become jaded by their work experiences, corporate America, that kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Sure.
And then they unintentionally bring that mindset into their own business. So a good example of this is for like the P&L, your finances, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
My team knows what I pay myself, and they
Hmm.
also know what everybody else gets paid.
Hmm.
And we also look at all the numbers. We have like a snapshot of like these are the goals and like these are the numbers every quarter. And we have a quarterly meeting where I go over all of those numbers. Actually, the team does it now because they have grown into those roles, right?
Hmm.
But like we go over all of the numbers. This was our revenue. This was our net profit. This was our labor like percentage, right? Like this is where we lost clients and where we grew clients. This is the money that we are making or not making. I mean, it literally is here are all of it's not the whole P&L, right? But it's the highlight because if we're all in the same boat and we all have the same goal, me keeping them in the dark is only going to lead to to distrust. And so that's hard. And I understand that that's not applicable with every business. I totally do. But for me and my small group, I've got 5 full-time employees and probably another 6 or 7 regular part-time contractors that we've worked with for years. It is important to me that everyone understands where we're going so that we can all work together to get there. And so, like, that requires me as an owner to give them the trust that I can be transparent. You use the word authentic, that
Hmm.
I can be vulnerable with them if I don't know the answers. There are a lot of times that they ask questions and go, I don't know.
Hmm.
We're going to have to figure it out. Right? And I think the first couple of times after I hire people and they hear that, they're like, "What do you mean you don't know? You're the boss." And it's like, "But you don't know the answer. I don't know the answer." Like, this is the first
Yeah.
time I'm doing it too. Right? But when you build that trust with people, they lean in. They share that vulnerability. They start to build a confidence that it's okay that we don't have the answers for everything because we together can figure it out. We can overcome, we can improve, we can grow. And so then it's like, yeah, like at the end of the day, it's like you're not just leaving them better than you found them. You as a company are going to be more successful
Yeah.
because you've developed a team of people that are in it together. I've had team members come to me and go, Anna-Vija, I've gotten a job offer. Like I was scouted or recruited or headhunted or whatever. Like I was offered a job that was 20 grand more than I'm
Mhm.
making with you right now.
Mhm.
Can we talk about my career path here? They didn't just leave me and go take the better offer. We sit down and I say, what are the pros of taking that job? Is that the career that you want? Well, what's
Mhm.
gonna be different about it? Right? Oh, you're gonna have to drive into work every day in traffic and back in traffic.
Mhm.
Oh, and you're gonna have to start buying your lunch outside of the house. And their
Mhm.
salaried hours look like 50 or 60 a week, not your 36-hour, 4-day work week. Like, do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? So it's like we've said I've had multiple times where people get offered jobs with higher pay rates and choose to stay with my company because we are in it together, right? Not because it's just for the money, but it's because they're like, this is the life that I want. But that requires trust. It also means that if they decide to go somewhere else, I can't be selfish. I have to be happy for them and support them and like make it work with the business that I've got, right? So
Mhm.
it's hard though, I think, because people come from corporate environments where the knee jerk reaction is to be like, no, 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 like keep it all close to the vest and secret.
Mhm.
And like I'll only let you know what you need to know for you to do what I want you to do.
Mhm.
And people feel that, and then they don't trust back.
Exactly. And I love being transparent like that because then it does take away, where are we as a company and how, because everyone wants to know how secure is my position and what does my livelihood look like going forward? What does my career path? And, you want to grow employees. And that's why I think mental health is so important is, you want people to function at their best and their highest. And that can only happen if they're healthy, mentally, and they have that environment to really kind of grow it and shine.
Yes.
I need to put this on a t-shirt, but the first few years, I think one of the things I was always saying is we've not been at this place before. I didn't know the answer. I didn't have the answer. And I would say, well, we've not been here before. So I don't know. I don't know.
Mhm.
And like you said, at first people were a little freaked out. The fact is we didn't know, but we could navigate it as a team and come up with a really good solution that
Yeah.
would go into that SOP, because we hadn't been at that place before. But I think the leadership that you have when people are making those life-changing decisions. And I've also had conversations with employees where I've said, you've had a great career here, but this has been your first or second job.
Mhm.
And you probably do need this experience in this other arena. But in saying that, my hope is that they go get that experience and it's somewhere down the road, our paths will cross again and maybe they will circle back to us. I'm not threatened by them
Yeah.
going somewhere else. I want them to go get good skills or have a good experience or not have a good experience and because particularly in rural health, there's a limited amount of people that work in the
Yeah.
industry. And what we find is they tend to go in different places, but we all know those same places. So we
Mhm.
talked about not burning bridges
Oh,
and,
yeah.
that you may be someone's supervisor here, but then you may work for them over at this other facility.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
but it gets back to being transparent though, like you said.
Yeah. We've had a lot of situations where it's not even like you've heard that term like managing out, like, "Oh, I'm gonna manage them out of the business," right?
Mhm.
I so much prefer sitting down with someone and just saying, like, "If you're ready to move on from here, just tell me." Like, and we talked a little bit ago about that call that I have after someone's been with us for a couple of weeks, right? One of the things I tell them on that call is like, we hire a lot of people where it's their first or second job. And it's like, that's okay. Like, that's what we're here for.
Mhm.
And like, we train and we teach and we grow and all those things. But like, I don't have any misconception that you're going to work for me until you retire or till one of us die. You know what I mean? Like, that's
Yes.
insane.
Thank
Like,
you for saying that.
you're 22. Like, like, you are not going to work at this agency
Yes.
until you're
Yes.
65, right? So, like, my business coach, an amazing woman named Hannah Paramore Breen, she owned Paramore Digital for 14 years. She had this very harsh but very applicable advice, and she said, "Anna-Vija, everyone will leave you." She's like, "In business, you have to come to grips, to terms with the idea that everyone will leave you. Your clients, your team members, your strategic partners, groups that you're part of, like everyone will leave you." And if you hold tight to the no, you're supposed to stay here and it's supposed to never change, you are making your life harder. If you just accept the fact that you are a chapter in someone else's life and everyone else's life, and vice versa, right? They are a chapter in yours and everyone will leave you. It doesn't have to be bad. And so burning bridges is one thing, Shelly, but now I've gotten to the point where I just say right up front, like, you've been working with me 2 weeks. I hope you really like it and I hope you're super successful here. But if for any reason this isn't the right fit for you, just tell me.
Mhm.
Just say it. I'm not gonna fire you overnight, right? Like,
Mhm.
because I still need you to do the work and you still need to make a paycheck.
Mhm.
But I will help you find your next job because I know lots of people and I would
Mhm.
be happy to be a reference for you. And
Mhm.
also, you can help me train your replacement. Isn't
Yes.
that a much better way to do that than you giving me none or 2 weeks notice and us being all like, "Oh gosh, now what are we gonna do?" And now I'm mad at you because you left me in the lurch? Like, just tell me that this isn't the right fit and I will single-handedly go help you find the next role, right?
Mhm.
And probably help coach you into figuring out what it is because you're 22 and you don't know, right? Like, you have no
No.
idea what you wanna do. But, like, in a lot of situations, people, I mean, I've had people literally say to me, but like, I can tell before they can that it's not working out. And I'll be
Mhm.
like, "Hey, you don't seem to really enjoy this job. Maybe we can help find another one." And I've had one guy was like, "This is the weirdest conversation I've ever had with a boss." And I was
Mhm.
like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine I would be talking to my boss about not liking my job and that person trying to help me find the next one." And I'm like, "Right, but isn't that the best way to do it?" And he's like, "No, it makes total logical sense, but like, I've never experienced this before." Like, because most people are just like, "No." get out. Like, if you don't want to work here anymore, then get out right now. And it's like, yeah. So I completely agree with you. It's like if you can have that transparency and that
Mhm,
trust, you
mhm,
should be able to help people move along their own professional and personal
mhm.
path. But you have to kind of take your ego out of it and be like, hey, everyone's going to leave me. Like, let's just make this the best for everybody.
I'm so impressed that you talked about that and, having those hard conversations and then that everyone does leave and there's seasons in life. There's
Yeah.
seasons of certain friendships and there's seasons for relationships and even businesses, but those seasons change. So evolving into that next season and being prepared to letting that next season be, a beautiful season too it is very difficult for most people. So I think you are a rare CEO, but I think you're doing things that if more people would do, they would see a higher retention, productivity, and frankly, a lot more business success. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
very appreciative of you leading that charge.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, and it's the more I talk about it, the more I hope that other people hear and like normalize, right? Like,
Mhm,
oh, maybe I don't have to hold everything so tightly, right? Like maybe I could bring someone in and, set the expectations and the tools, training, and resources to be successful, but to let them help me, not just be like, well, I have to keep control over everything or it's all going to fall apart. Like,
mhm.
it's not that you're not gonna have some burns along the way, because I definitely have had plenty of those, but, like, also, like, when I do, I have the rest of the team to lean on. It's not just me.
Yes, exactly. Well, why don't you tell us one of your visions that you're really passionate about for your company and personally?
Sure. So, I will say that, gosh, those are kinda similar, but they're a little different. So, for the company, one of the things that we have really seen a lot of, engagement with over the last couple years since the pandemic is just this exact thing. So people who are trying to build a business, they don't know how to scale it and they're trying to figure that out usually on their own, like we've been talking about this
Mhm,
whole time, right? And they can look at a business like mine and go, "Oh my gosh, I'd like to have something like that." Whatever their actual business is,
mhm,
products or services or whatever, but they want something similar to the business that I'm running, right? So this kind of like flexibility and these kind of team members and this kind of culture and scalability and growth. And so, one of the things that I am professionally really excited about is that that's what we've been building. So, this year, my team and I, we decided that we've always done the marketing, the services, and the assessments and strategies, all those things. We're going to keep doing that. But we've created sort of this new silo or like vertical of products and services that are around project manager mindset, how to hire an assistant, because I know a lot of CEOs and business owners that go, "I need an assistant," and then they can't find,
yeah,
interview, hire, and train one that sticks around, and they're
mhm,
confused as to why that isn't working.
mhm,
Things like, "I need templates that I can just use and plug and play," and so that's been our focus for this year, and so that's what I'm really excited about coming up, is just really honing in on some of those more accessible and affordable products and packages, webinars, and services for them. And in my personal life, I will say that I am just trying to get much more committed to my own like mental health and physical kind of like exercise and just health in general. So that is where I've been trying to focus. When work upticks, you're
mhm,
trying in the personal life
mhm.
to like keep that
Yes.
balanced. And so I've gone back to like running my 5Ks and I'm trying to like up that. I'm not committing to a
Mhm,
10K yet, but I'm on my way. So
mhm,
that's where I'm trying to focus, is getting back to like my own regular
mhm,
practice of some of that meditation and yoga and running and things like that.
mhm.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. That just does my heart. I don't know, it just makes me so happy for you
Thank
and
you.
happy for
Yeah.
your employees and just happy about and encouraged and optimistic about the forward movement of owning businesses and entrepreneurship and that sort of thing. Because if we're really going to end burnout, and I've been saying recently, you can't
Mhm.
vacation burnout away in order to
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. A week or 2
You just
vacation.
go right, yeah, right back
Yeah,
to it. Yeah.
yeah, and you just literally you have more to do. So the only way to do it is what you just described. You have to invest in yourself like you invest in your company. And the fact is when you start a company, it's hours after hours and it's you make sacrifices for friendships and hobbies and that's the reality short term. but you're investing in something that's going to be life changing. And so investing in our own mental health changes our life and those around us as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, well, thank you so much. I'm so honored to get to meet you and just hear about your company and your success and everything.
I've really enjoyed it, Shelly. Thanks for having me on today. I hope this is helpful for your listeners.
Yes, thank you very much. We will talk soon. And thank you for being on the Green Velvet Couch. Thanks so much for listening to Shelly O'Neill from the Green Velvet Couch. If you're enjoying the show, please rate, subscribe, and review where you listen to your podcast. That helps others find the show and begin their own wellness journey. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, go live your best life.